welcome to Universal Talk. On today's show, we ponder being one with nature. Let's present the case. First, we must consider the connection between all living things and the ebb and flow of nature. Is this what is meant by the circle of life? If this is true, then can an individual truly be one with nature? And finally, is everything connected? What if there was no separation in anything, whether animate or inanimate? What if all things were connected in some way? And what if, or what could possibly connect all things? In a moment, we will have Ramanathan Iyer on the show. He is a spiritual counselor and an intuitive healer. He is a frequent guest on our Universal Talk teleconference that is held every Wednesday live through Blog Talk Radio. His focus on the physical is through the Paradise Diet and Lightning Fitness System. Ramanathan Iyer, welcome to Universal Talk.
Hi there.
So how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm having fun this morning.
Great. Okay, so can you tell our viewers what your perspective is of being at one with nature, or what does this mean to you?
Well, I feel that, by the way, is my volume level okay?
Yes.
I feel like we're all a part of nature, and that nature is what the body is. Like, imagine like waterfalls and sunshine and foxes and flowers. Imagine a human form filled with all those things, all these different elements of nature. A human body filled with the rain and the clouds and lightning, and that's really how the human body works. Our body is a living composition of the various elements of nature. So when you begin to spend more time with nature and understand her, then you understand the human body. If you spend a lot of time with the human body, studying it from the inside out, then you begin to understand nature. You'll realize they follow the same pattern. There's actually a fundamental pattern of life. You could think of it as a sort of cosmic DNA code. Every cell of your body shares the same DNA code, and in a larger sense, every being in creation shares a sort of common cosmic DNA pattern. And we each utilize that DNA code in different ways, just like the cells in your hand don't use the DNA code of your body the same way your feet cells do, but they have the same code. A fox doesn't use the same code of life the way you do, but we carry the same cosmic code of life. So there is this cosmic DNA code that unites us all. So nature is one family, and we all use the code slightly differently. So
there is a connection between all things.
There is a universal cosmic pattern of life that unites all forms of life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's interesting. So how are we connected to such things like inanimate objects maybe, or more solid objects? Like you mentioned the fox, but what about like a rock or something like that?
Yeah, well, rocks have their own levels of consciousness. A rock corresponds to your bone system. Your bones are the rocks of your body. A waterfall corresponds to your arms region, the pelvic sphere, and your emotions. There's correspondences everywhere. Every atom is alive. So, this idea of inanimate matter is kind of a broken concept, is an outdated thing, because atoms are very conscious and very loving and very gentle creatures, and we're made of them, and they make up all forms of life. So if the foundation of life is conscious, you can sure bet everything else that's made of atoms will be conscious.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel that all matter then, anything that we could perceive and then maybe some of the things we can't perceive, are connected in some way through this consciousness, what you speak of?
Yeah, you wonder how sort of all life might be connected, what exact medium connects us all, and think about what connects us all to the planet. We're all anchored to the planet by this force of gravity, so whether it's daytime or nighttime, or wherever in the world you are, there's this force keeping you to the planet. And that universal binding force of gravity is also what unites us all magnetically, mentally. And all forms of life communicate mentally through this magnetic network. There is a sort of cosmic internet, and it's run by the suns. The solar network creates this universal network that you tap into, and as a creature of nature, you use this magnetic network to communicate.
Mm-hmm. So scientifically speaking, you put it on a DNA level that all matter has some type of a DNA, or at least all living matter. And maybe you could explain the difference between living and dead, because some people think that a rock is dead. Whereas...
Yeah. All right. Well, we as humans have an anatomical arrangement, and if we're not breathing, we die because we have certain nutritional requirements that a rock doesn't have. But, a rock likes certain things too, and it blossoms under certain conditions. It's happy, and rocks have emotions. A funny example, one time I was walking through a stream a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to start picking up rocks and throwing them around, and I was doing this for about half an hour because this was relatively recently. I was throwing these rocks around the stream for about half an hour before I even realized what was going on. I was like, why do I feel this compulsive urge to throw these rocks around? Like, I don't have this urge I feel like there's something influencing me to want to do this. And then I realized it was the rocks. They wanted to be thrown around. They wanted to move. They'd been sitting in the same place for a long time. They wanted some variety. So you can think of what enables consciousness as not being limited to the human brain and nervous system, or even the animal brain and nervous system. Think of consciousness as sort of always being there, and it expresses in different ways through different forms. A tree doesn't really have a brain and nervous system per se, but it's still alive and conscious, and you can talk to them and tune into them, and they still have emotions, and they're actually much smarter than most humans I've encountered. So trees have their own life. Every form of life has its levels of awareness, but we don't all have the same type of body. But what's wrong with that? As long as there's a container of some kind, consciousness will find a way to fill it and enliven it, because that's just how Mother Nature and Prime Creator are. They love to enliven things, and they love to express their form. So if it's a form, it's got some level of consciousness associated with it or gravitated to it. The least conscious forms of life are obviously the ones created by humans, because they're the least beautiful forms. If it's a beautiful form, then consciousness will want to dwell there.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot about consciousness. Is there a consciousness field all around everybody and everything? And is there some type of energy of consciousness that's emitted from maybe the center of the universe or from our sun? Or what's your perspective on that?
Well, I like the question, but you might want to approach it a different way. Everything's made of consciousness. Well, this word consciousness is pretty vague at this point. What I'm talking about is the fundamental substance of life, which is Prime Creator Essence. Before there was creation, something obviously existed that then made creation. You might call it Prime Creator, you might call it God, you might call it nature, you might call it yourself, whatever you want. But obviously there's some fundamental substance and that existed prior to creation, and that substance decided to vibrate itself and create all these different forms of life. And depending on the rate of vibration and the form and the structure, we have all the variety of life. So you asked, is there a consciousness field? Well, you don't need a field of consciousness. You are consciousness. Everything is made of consciousness, or let's say Prime Creator, or I call it joy, or this essence of beauty. So all of life is made of this fundamental essence. So of course it's vibrating everywhere in creation. It's what creation is made out of.
Okay, so now maybe you could define the difference between the mind, body, spirit within one human form.
Okay, well, again, it's all the same substance vibrating at different rates. The body seems pretty obvious, your physical body, and you also have higher dimensional bodies. Your mind is something that is operative within your brain and nervous system, and you also have higher dimensional bodies that are mapping to your mind. You can think of your mind as sort of a magnetic bubble that surrounds your body. And so every thought you think appears in this bubble, this field around your body. People call it the aura. But it's this magnetic field. It's literally your mind. It's the radiance of your brain. Your mind is the radiant light of your brain that moves out in all directions. So when you think very strong thoughts, your magnetic field changes in specific ways. When you in general have a powerful mind, your magnetic field is bigger. And if you think in ways in which you're limiting yourself, your aura or your magnetic field shrinks a little bit.
Well, you mentioned the consciousness field and the aura. Is there a commonality between that? Is it everything like energy, in other words, but just vibrating at a different frequency?
Yeah, everything's the same pattern of life vibrating at different rates. So your mental field, if you imagine the way it pulses and vibrates with different thoughts, you could actually directly relate that to the way a pond ripples and has different formations that appear and then disappear. And you could even relate that to the way lava flows. You could even relate it to the way the patterns of a lightning storm. The patterns of life repeat at different levels and at different levels of density and physical solidity and higher and lower levels of energy. It's all these same patterns that are fundamentally just good, beautiful patterns. And then Mother Nature reflects them and repeats them at different levels in order to create something called harmony. See, there's this idea of harmonic resonance. Harmonic resonance requires a degree of similitude, similarity. When you have fundamentally similar patterns, but then you create slight variations, then you achieve a sort of natural harmony. A simple proof, you know, we humans all kind of look pretty similar fundamentally, and that enables us to communicate, theoretically. You know, theoretically, it enables us to sort of interact in a harmonious way. Maybe I should pick animals as a better example. All rabbits kind of look kind of similar, so they can interact with each other. They can have different rabbits who have different personalities. They can all kind of get along because they have certain similarity. Oh, you have 2 ears just like me. You know, oh, you know, you like the same diet that I like. So because of similarity, harmony is enabled. Now take this concept to a more fundamental level. Your mind is its own kind of substance, water is its own kind of substance, air is its own kind of substance, but because they operate in similar patterns in similar ways, they're in harmony with each other. So that uniting structure of creation that makes all of life be in a state of harmony and beauty are these fundamental patterns of life that are present at every level.
Okay. So with back to humanity, we perceive things with what most recognize as the 5 senses. What's going on outside of what we can perceive? A lot, would you say?
Well, if you're thinking of physical human beings in this dimension, where you're thinking most humans of this dimension are thinking of this planet are only thinking of this dimension, the physical plane. Furthermore, they're only thinking of this planet, which is even more limiting. So the range of awareness of a physical human being of planet Earth is about as small as it gets. All animals on this planet have a much greater range of consciousness. They can move freely through the dream realm and the physical world, and talk mentally, and they have quite a range of emotion, whereas humans are about the most limited unconscious thing there is at the moment. It's funny, though, because they think they're the fanciest thing on the planet, yet they're the ones destroying the planet. So right. I don't really agree with their conclusion that they're the smartest thing in town, because they're the only creatures on the planet that habitually hurt themselves, who are weak and ugly and are killing the planet and are literally a dying race. You know, the rabbits are nowhere near extinction. The rabbits are not killing themselves off. The humans, they don't change their ways, are killing themselves off. I don't call that very intelligent. So the most limited kind of consciousness creature on this planet is the human being. However, the human being has the potential to be the most aware, most multidimensional creature on this planet, but they're not utilizing that potential. So what's going on beyond the range of the consciousness of the modern human on planet Earth? Everything. What is the human capable of perceiving? Everything. There's no limits on the human being, but the human being has to utilize its potential. It has to eat properly, sleep properly, exercise, and love itself, and then there's no limits on what the human can perceive. The answer to your question is certainly not finite. What's going on beyond the 5 senses? Your senses actually are operative in the higher planes and in other dimensions just as much as in the physical.